Good morning, CHD. Welcome to Pediatric Perspectives, where we are looking at children's health challenges from a different perspective, one that includes critical thinking, one that's not afraid to give you the honest truth. My guest today is Kari Bundy. Welcome, Kari.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on the show. I am just so blessed that I get to talk to you. You are a health activist. You've done so much for the movement of health freedom. You had a tragic story that we're going to get into because we're talking about pertussis today. Your son, Mason, I believe he was 4 months old in 2011 when, following routine vaccines, he passed away. And I know you've spoken at other health freedom events. You've been at the Children's March for Humanity, March Against Monsanto, Defeat the Mandates, Autism One. Your work in journalism and PR has been very helpful. You worked with Generation Rescue, did some translations for Children's Health Defense, and now you're the National Grassroots Coordinator at the U.S. Council on Domestic Relations, I believe.
I am.
You're super active in social media with over 100,000 followers on Facebook. Wow. I'm surprised they didn't deplatform you.
They did deplatform me.
Okay.
Actually, after Zuckerberg went on in January and said he was removing all of the blocks, I suddenly gained 80,000 followers.
I hate to make you do this, but I need to hear it for myself, and I think some of our viewers need to hear this. We're still having this ongoing pertussis whooping cough outbreak in the country, and a couple deaths. I believe it was in Louisiana not too long ago. You know, anytime there's a disease for which there's a vaccine, the fear mongering, it just goes through the roof to try to get people to vaccinate. And I think your story would be important for people to hear.
Well, Mason was born at 35 weeks. So he was a little bit early, but he was really healthy and he didn't have any NICU time. We skipped Hep B at birth because I was just nervous about having that. But for some reason, I went ahead with his normal 2-month and then 4-month vaccines. But right before his 4-month vaccines, he was actually sick with RSV. It was about 2 weeks before these vaccines that he recovered from RSV. And I'm sorry. I'm thinking about that appointment. It was really hard. We walked into a normal 4-month checkup thinking that we weren't going to be vaccinating him because he'd just been really sick. So my expectation at the time was they're not going to vaccinate him because my older daughter, who was 5 at the time, that's how quickly it changed. He was a newborn. She was 5. When she was a baby, they were completely against giving vaccines within several weeks. I feel like even a month of an illness. So I didn't expect this conversation to take place, but we walked in, we did all of the normal things. And then they started talking about the vaccines. And I said, you know, he's just been so sick. I really think we should wait. This is what we'd done before. If one of our other kids was sick, Mason was our third. And they said, pertussis is really bad. You have a premature infant who has just had RSV and he really needs this shot. That's what they said to me. I said, we're really not interested in that today. And they turned to my husband. And, you know, in the 14 years that have followed, it's often the husband that they go after when the mom is trying to stand her ground. And my husband, and they said, pertussis is a deadly disease and you need to get your son vaccinated or he could die. The verbatim words that they used with him are, if you do not get your son vaccinated, you're signing his death certificate. And that was incredibly hard hitting. We were so young. We were 23 years old and we'd just seen this baby in the hospital. We were completely coerced into believing that that was the truth. And so we got that vaccine, which was a 5-in-1 vaccine. I mean, it was DTaP and I don't recall.
The Pentasol probably.
Yes.
Yeah, that was, in my experience, one of the worst combo vaccines ever. When we tried it a couple different times in my group practice at the time, I wasn't on my own. Calls went through the roof from parents with kids who were screaming, high fevers. There was something wrong with that vaccine.
Yeah, there definitely was. A lot of the SIDS moms I've talked to, it's been that vaccine specifically. So he got the vaccine on March 1st, 2011. And we went home and he was fussy, but he had been fussy since the 2-month shots. He had been a colicky, screamed 23 hours a day baby between the 2-month and 4-month appointment. And within 24 hours of that appointment, he actually went quiet, bizarrely quiet. And the last time I saw him was March 4th when I put him to bed. My husband took him upstairs for the night, put him to bed, came back down, and we spent some time together. When we went up for the night, Mason slept in a bassinet next to our bed. I leaned over to kiss him, and it was just after midnight, so March 5th, technically. And I kissed his forehead like I did so many times before. And it was really cold.
Oh.
And I knew immediately that he was dead. So I just started screaming to my husband that he's dead. I don't know what to do. He's dead. And my husband just picked him up and ran out the door and drove him himself, trying to do CPR over his shoulder while he drove to get help. 90 minutes of resuscitation efforts, so much epinephrine that his leg was swelling where they were injecting it. He wasn't coming back.
That was the day after the shots?
3 days after.
3 days after. Wow. Oh, I'm so sorry. The medical profession is embarrassing. I'm just so sorry you had to go through that. You had another child after that?
I did.
Is that Ollie?
That's Ollie. I had him the next year, 2012.
Okay. And what was his experience with vaccines and pertussis?
Well, we decided not to vaccinate, a decision that was originally going to be no vaccines for the first 2 years, and then we would consider some. And then at 13 months, so this is October of 2013, he came down with a really bad cough. It was a cough that whooped. It was brutal. I mean, it looked like it was going to knock him over. But then what I really noticed when I started to get scared was after that and the exhale, he would go back to playing with his sister.
Fascinating.
And it was crazy because this was the disease they told me was going to kill Mason. This is what they said 100% was going to lead to him dying. And here I have this toddler that is, yes, very sick, but there is treatment and there is an option. And when I found Mason, there was nothing. And that's what I tell parents. When I found Mason, there was no course of action. He was gone. Yeah. But Ollie, he had all the opportunity in the world to get healthy. And he did. And he's almost 13 years old now.
Thank you, Mason, for saving Ollie's life.
Yeah.
And thank you for this story, Kari, because this hopefully will save lots of lives. The death rate from the vaccines or pertussis is way greater than the death rate from pertussis, from whooping cough. So it's tragic when you lose a child either way.
Right.
But why would you choose an option that's more deadly? But you didn't get that choice because of the way they manipulated the situation for you. I'm very sorry.
Thank you.
How did you treat Ollie, by the way, when he had because obviously you probably had to take matters into your own hands at this point. You probably weren't going to rush to the ER.
No, absolutely not. We were not going to the ER. We actually did the vitamin C protocol. So we did a vitamin C protocol to bowel tolerance. I'm not a doctor, but I did consult with one.
Yeah.
And we did 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C hourly to bowel tolerance. And we did that for probably a month.
Wow.
They call it the 90-day cough. It really did last 3 months, but the severe whooping, the paroxysms, that was only a few weeks. And that's really when we hit it hard, because I did make the mistake of going to our doctor because I hadn't found a holistic or integrative provider yet until right after this. And he got, his nose swabbed for pertussis, which I didn't know they had to report to the state. So I did have to fill a prescription, but we didn't give that to him.
Gotcha.
Because we didn't feel like that was appropriate, given that by the time they got that test back, he was through the worst of the illness.
No, I think the antibiotic prescription they probably gave you for Zithromax, azithromycin, could play a role in a case. I mean, if you're listening to this and you have a child who has pertussis and you've treated with vitamin C, and then they start getting worse. Like they call it a bacterial superinfection. So the whooping cough is on the tail end, it's getting better. And then all of a sudden your child starts getting way worse. Then that's sort of, okay, they probably got a bacterial infection on top of their whooping cough. And you're absolutely right. At that point, it would make sense. Wow. You gave a lot of vitamin C. I've heard of doing exactly that to bowel tolerance, which just means, for those of you who are listening, if your kid starts getting diarrhea, back off. It's too much. Right. But I had never talked to somebody who actually did that high of a dose in a younger child. That's like, whoa.
I know. I did. And now they have so many clinics with IVs. That would be the better route to do for this.
Right. You don't have to worry about the bowel issues.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. You go get some IV vitamin C and you can get levels up really quickly without a lot of discomfort. Super, super important. Thank you so much for sharing this story. What's your advice for parents right now, 2025? There's an uptick in whooping cough right now in 2025 in the US. This happens every few years. And anytime there's a disease for which there's a vaccine that goes on the rise, it's all over the news, fear mongering. What's your advice for parents?
I've never made a good decision when I've made it from a place of fear. I've learned through losing Mason that when I'm afraid, it's the time to step back and try to be more logical. I've also acknowledged that the news is literally there to make you afraid. So sometimes it's okay to step back and not watch the news. And if you do watch the news, look into what the news says for yourself. A lot of these numbers are not scary when you really look at them in scale. But I also think trusting your instinct is important. And a lot of people say, what are your qualifications? You're not a doctor. You're not a scientist. I do think that parents, we do have intuition. And with every fiber in my body, I felt it that day, that I shouldn't have done what I did. And I let that fear control which direction I chose for my child. And in a game of Russian roulette, I lost.
Oof, you gave me goosebumps. That's so powerful. Parents, moms, you have that inner knowing, that intuition that Kari's talking about, and trust it. Don't ever give up your authority to a authority figure. The doctors, just because they have a stethoscope around their neck or a white robe or whatever it is, you know what's best for your child. And Kari, you're so right. If your gut instinct, your intuition is telling you no, at the very least, pause and don't do whatever it is that your intuition is telling you not to do. Listen to it. Thank you for that amazing advice. Thank you for sharing your powerful story. God bless you.
Thanks for having me.
That's a really, really, really rough story. That's tough. Thank you for sticking with us. We're going to turn the tables again, and I'm having Polly Tommey come, and this time she's going to talk to me and ask me some questions. Hi, Polly.
Hi, Dr. Paul. It's great to be here. I mean, that is tough. And Kari Bundy, the whole Bundy family are an amazing family to speak out about what happened to their precious Mason. And it's just, it's a real true vax study in the house with devastating results. So how does it make you feel as a pediatrician that you listening to that story, because of the way you were trained at medical school, you were never told that babies could die, right?
No, absolutely. 1 in a million, right? And so it's something you would never see. And I remember back when I first started practice and we were still doing the old DPT. It wasn't somebody I directly was caring for, but I was supervising residents and medical students. And one of the patients seen on a day that I wasn't there was given the DPT and died. And I remember just going, wow, that's a thing. But when it really hits you in medicine, it wakes you up. And you're absolutely right, Polly. We're not taught that these vaccines are dangerous. We're taught that they're safe and effective, which is just a marketing slogan. And so, yeah, when you are a part of causing that level of harm, it's really tough. I mean, for me, my biggest thing closest to that was autism. Because I had, and I've shared this story in other platforms, but in 2004, 5, 6, and 7, I had patients of my own that were normal, happy, smiling, starting to communicate. 1 and 18-month-olds regress into severe nonverbal autism after a series of vaccines. Typically, the MMR was one of them. So it was like, yeah, I can't do that. I will no longer do business as usual. And it's a shame that it has to take this level of harm sometimes to wake people up. And some pediatricians don't even wake up for that. They'll go, oh, it's a coincidence.
So Mason had the DTaP and Mason died. In this day and age, at 4 months old, they're not just getting the DTaP, but they're getting a lot of vaccines in one go.
Yep.
Yeah, they think that's safe. But 4 months is when we hear about SIDS over and over and over again. But it's not the vaccine, they say.
No, I've got a chapter on SIDS in my new book, Vax Facts. A deep dive into that, and the data is very damning. It's very clear it's actually the vaccines that are causing most of the SIDS. And unfortunately, so in the US, the recent data just came out. There's over 20,000 infant deaths in the US per year. And only a fraction of those, I think 2,000 something, are listed as SIDS. Another 2,000-3,000 are listed as suffocation, which is probably SIDS. And then there's a massive category, over 7,000, that are listed unknown. So put all together, more than half of these 22,000 deaths could very well be vaccine related. And the reason I say that is not just a guess, it's the data. And the data is in that new book, Facts. What we were seeing, for example, of the 6 well-done studies that looked at when did these infants die relative to their vaccines, and 78% died in the first week. And the majority die on day 1, day 0, the day you got the shot. And then the next day is the next highest number, and the next day is the next highest number. Same thing we saw with COVID, Polly. These so-called vaccines or these shots are, in some cases, absolutely deadly.
Yeah, and we're focusing at CHDTV in the month of May. This month, we are focusing on the deaths that vaccines can and do cause death. And we have so many, Dr. Thomas, we have so many dead baby stories that we could run for months and months, the stories that we've collected.
I know you were on the bus and you were interviewing these families, and that was a labor of love. Thank you so much for that work, because it couldn't have been easy.
No, well, you joined us, and you and Dee Dee joined us for a lot of them, which was fun and important as well to have a pediatrician on the bus. Let's talk a bit more about the DTaP vaccine here, because again, they are really shoving this down the throats of these young parents right now with this whole whooping cough outbreak, and which is why thank you for covering it today with this show. And people are living in fear. What would you do if you were forget being a doctor, just a young parent with a young baby? Would you vaccinate with the DTaP or Tdap? Would you vaccinate yourself or your baby, or would you just get through whooping cough if it came your way?
Well, if you had asked me that 10, 15, 20 years ago, I would have said, of course I'm going to get the DTaP. Don't you know babies are dying from pertussis, whooping cough, pertussis? And yes, very, very rarely babies will die from whooping cough. It was somewhere between 1 and 4 per year for the last couple decades, with occasional years where it's a little higher, out of roughly 4 million births. So it's let's call it a 1 in a million risk of your baby dying of whooping cough. But here's the thing. People don't know this, but the Tdap, when they made the acellular pertussis part of the vaccine, it's not providing protection. So the chances that you vaccinating your infant at 2, 4, and 6 months is going to have any difference on the death of your child is close to 0. The organism Bordetella pertussis has changed. It's now pertactin negative. That vaccine was designed to recognize the protein pertactin. So it's not working. There's solid evidence now that if you get that vaccine, you're more likely to get whooping cough than if you don't get the vaccine. So it's actually increasing your risk, lifetime risk of getting pertussis multiple times by getting that vaccine. And then the most damning of all evidence is the information about what is your chance of dying from the vaccine compared to what's your chance of dying from the disease. And the answer to that is rather shocking. Your risk of death from the disease from pertussis is less than 2 million. From the vaccine, it's more than 1 in 76,000. So we're talking 30 times more likely that the vaccine will kill you than the disease. So to answer your question, once I know that information, no, I'm not going to risk my baby's life with a dangerous product when there's things I can do naturally to boost my child's immune system so they can fight off any infection, not just pertussis, not just whooping cough, but everything. I'd rather go that natural route and use that natural immunity, that innate immunity, God-given immunity, the beautiful, amazing bodies and immune systems that we have, than relying on a faulty product that has no safety testing that's being given. Yeah, I have to stop because it upsets me so much.
Yeah. So you have a chapter on SIDS in your new book, Vax Facts. In that chapter, which I have read your book, but I can't remember exactly everything you've written. Do we know if there's any SIDS in the unvaccinated community?
I've never heard of a case of SIDS in the unvaxxed. Have you?
No, never.
No. I would be, I mean, it would be close to impossible, just because what would be the mechanism? I mean, okay, so I was a pediatrician right out of training when the American Academy of Pediatrics came out with the Back to Sleep program. Okay, and of course that was my academy, and so back to sleep, we can save babies' lives by putting them on their backs, because if you let them sleep on their tummies, they suffocate and die. Well, the vaccine program had just been expanded. This was 1987, 1988 when that was being rolled out, and I was just finishing my training. And all the vaccine deaths, what I know now to have probably been vaccine deaths, were now being blamed on sleep position. So it was a nice way to divert attention away from the real cause of these babies dying, which was the vaccines. They've blamed suffocation by moms. Moms always get blamed, right? So, you were sleeping with your baby and you suffocated them. Theoretically, that is possible. I did have once in my career a mom in tears, she was beside herself. She was a large woman and she had fallen asleep while nursing. And she said to me, I think I suffocated my baby. If I have to believe her that could have happened. So is it theoretically possible? Yes, but not if you're careful.
Vax Facts book you can get on Amazon or in any other major
everywhere books are sold, or go to vaxfactsbook.com.
It's imperative that we get that book and get it out to these young mums, everyone. It's just got vital information in there. Can we just clear something up? Because we did talk about whooping cough a week or so ago on the morning show on a Wednesday. And there was a lot of confusion. A lot of young mums didn't know that pertussis and whooping cough are the same thing. They thought they were two different things.
It is absolutely the same thing.
Yeah, because of the vaccine they talk about pertussis, and yet the papers are like, whooping cough is going to kill you and your child. So know that they're the same thing. And you can't go to your doctor and just get a little vaccine for whooping cough. Oh, no, no, no. There's more to it than that, correct?
Absolutely. It's important to also know that we now understand that those who are vaccinated with this acellular whooping cough vaccine, the acellular pertussis, actually are more likely to be colonized with whooping cough, pertussis, and therefore they're also more likely to transmit it to others. So that highest risk time is infants, right? And that's where parents are most worried. I've got my newborn baby. I don't want them to be exposed. Well, we used to, about 15 years ago, do this thing called cocooning, where you would vaccinate the parents, the grandparents, the caregiver, anybody that's going to be around that baby. You give them a DTaP. And the thinking was you're going to prevent those people from bringing whooping cough, pertussis, into the home and exposing that baby who's more vulnerable. It failed, folks. In fact, it made things worse. Getting the Tdap makes it more likely you'll be colonized, more likely that you'll be infectious to others. And so it is the vaccinated who are a greater risk to the unvaxxed, and also a greater risk to those babies who are too young to get vaccines or really too young to develop a good immune response. And don't get me started on vaccines during pregnancy. Giving a Tdap to a pregnant woman is a double whammy. It's killing babies in the womb, increased miscarriages, but also it's harming the immunity of that newborn. The best way to have optimal immunity for the newborn is for mom to have had natural whooping cough at some point in her life and to be breastfeeding. Those two things combined provide amazing protection.
Yeah, quite right on the breastfeeding, everyone. So summarize up today's show. We heard the most amazing story from Kari Bundy, tragic story, and that should alone make everybody think about the DTaP vaccine. But the main thing is to not live in fear, breastfeed. What else, Dr. Thomas?
we live in a toxic world, and toxins combined, 1 and 1 might not be 2. It might be 10. So clean up your life. Where are the worst toxins? We're either eating them, drinking them, or breathing them. Well, the absolute worst is injecting them. But beyond that, if you're not injecting toxins, eat organic, filter your water. I'm sorry, most tap waters are not reliable in my opinion. There's just too much runoff from industry that gets into our water, and they're adding fluoride in many places, which needs to stop. Nurture, love, surround with loving community, get some sunshine. If your kid's old enough to be out playing and getting exercise and getting dirty, allow that. Let them be kids, and trust the natural immune system.
And this is coming from a pediatrician with 40 years experience, everybody. So please do listen. Right. Well, thank you for letting me hijack your show yet again, Dr. Thomas. It's been an absolute pleasure getting your advice and hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Polly, for joining my show. You always add a great touch with your probing questions. I really appreciate you so much. And thank you, everyone who stuck with us this long. This was a tough one. I just appreciate you still being here. And you can reach me at kidsfirstforever.com. And I look forward to seeing you next week.
"34 hours after he was vaccinated, he passed away in his bassinet. I found him unresponsive and cold.
My name is Nick Kendall,
My name is Melissa Pike, and this is Sawyer John Kendall.
our son.
When he was born, he was beautiful. He was perfect. He was 7 pounds, 7 ounces. He was breastfeeding, doing very well. We brought him home, and he was a very good sleeper when we first brought him home, and he ate very well. He loved to be outside in his stroller, walking with Mom while Dad was at work. And he always waited for Daddy to get home to snuggle him to sleep.
He was the perfect baby from the moment we brought him home.
They gave him Hep B.
Mm-hmm.
Did they give him vitamin K?
I feel like they did.
Yeah.
On October 20th of 2022, he went in for a well child check, and we were told that he had a virus, and he had a rash, and he had cold symptoms, but he didn't have a fever. The rash started improving over the next week. I was giving him daily breast milk baths, and he never had a fever, and he didn't seem uncomfortable. And 1 week later, on October 27th, we brought him into the pediatrician's office for his 2-month vaccinations, and he still had cold symptoms. And I had asked the pediatrician if he was sure that he needed the vaccines because he had a cold and was diagnosed with a virus a week prior. And the pediatrician told us yes, because he didn't have a fever. So we trusted the doctor to vaccinate Sawyer John, and he didn't flinch when he got the vaccines. We brought him home maybe within a half an hour after the appointment, and he let out a horrible scream that we had never heard before. We thought that he was just wet, needed to be changed, and that wasn't the case. He went to sleep fine that night, and the next day he was a little bit fussy. I held him for a while that day, and I'm so glad I did, because 34 hours after he was vaccinated, he passed away in his bassinet. I found him unresponsive and cold, and I picked him up, and I told Nick that he was gone. So Nick called 911, and we immediately performed CPR on him in our living room. didn't bring him back. So the EMTs came. There were so many people there. I had to run outside because I didn't want to see my baby like that. They tried for almost an hour to get him back and they couldn't. And then we were told that he passed away from SIDS. We found out on Christmas Eve that the medical examiner had determined his death as asphyxiation.
Improper sleep conditions is what was on the report.
Improper sleep.
Suboptimal
Suboptimal
sleep conditions. He was in his bassinet on the blanket that he was laying on that was on the bassinet, and he didn't even have anything in his bassinet with him. Nothing. And to read those results on Christmas Eve and to think that you were the one that caused your baby to pass away, it was just awful. I didn't want to accept the answer. I didn't believe it. So I requested further testing, and it took me 10 months to get it back and find somebody that would actually order all the tests for him after the medical examiner refused to do the tests and telling me that if there were aluminum in his system, there wouldn't be enough to be the cause of his death. The aluminum level in his blood was 95 micrograms per liter. Anything over 50 micrograms per liter in an adult is toxic. His was 95, and he was 8 weeks old.
It's just been an uphill battle fighting with the medical examiner's office with all this, and them trying to cover this up and make it look like it was our fault. And we knew it wasn't, so we kept fighting. And finally found someone that has our back with us and is helping us do further testing and not just believing what the medical examiner told us, because it was basically a lie, I feel. They just told us what was easy for them to just write it off as our fault, and instead of facing this as a vaccine injury, death. You get the,
Yeah, every single 2-month vaccine.
And so that pediatrics one as well, it's got like 6 or whatever in one. So he had so many.
While he was
Trying to fight
sick.
something off.
He still had the
His
rash.
He still had the rash, he still had the cold symptoms.
The only thing he didn't have was a fever. He told
said
us.
no.
Yeah, he told us that he thought it would be fine where there was no fever, and I mean, Sawyer still looked. I mean, he was a great baby too. You wouldn't know he was sick really, but I mean, he was sick. But I think just the doctor just went off the no fever, so we thought it was going to be okay. I guess he insisted that it would be fine getting the vaccinations that day.
He promised us he would be fine. I don't even think he remembers us.
I doubt it.
I don't know if he remembered us that day. I had to ask him to take his temperature, to listen to his lungs, to listen to his belly,
Melissa pretty much conducted the whole
to look at his
doctor's
rash,
appointment.
thinking that that might be a reason for him to say, well, we can always hold off on these vaccines or spread them out. We didn't know that there was an option to spread them out, spread the vaccines out over time, or to just say no. But we already felt like we were looked at different because neither of us got the COVID-19 vaccine. And all of my doctors knew that.
Even in the hospital, when she was pregnant. I mean, it's hard to point fingers, but we definitely were treated different in the hospital. We're looked at different because they knew we weren't. As soon as we came in, they knew we weren't. And I could tell they knew we weren't vaccinated. We got put in that, on that side of things as the unvaccinated.
I lost my job right before getting pregnant with Sawyer for not getting the COVID-19 vaccine, and I don't think that if I would have gotten the COVID-19 vaccine that I would have been able to carry him, because I have endometriosis. So I've struggled to get pregnant for many years, and when we finally had Sawyer, he was my miracle.
He really was.
Baby. I didn't think I'd ever be able to carry a child full term, and then I did.
And he was
All for him to be taken away. And this is the one I have left. This is my baby now. I had him cremated because I wanted him to be with us.
We wanted to take him everywhere. We would.
Like we would if he was still alive. This is why we're here. I can't tell anybody not to get their children vaccinated or to get them vaccinated. But I would just recommend that you really think about it before bringing your child in to be vaccinated, because really babies don't need to be vaccinated at all. A lot of places wait until they're at least 2 years old because that's when the blood-brain barrier grows together, and harmful toxins can't pass it as well. Babies, when they're this young, that blood-brain barrier has not closed off, and I think that's how they found all the aluminum that had gotten to his brain, ceased his respirations, and caused cardiac arrest. So there was nothing we could do to bring back. You can take care of your own child. You don't need a pediatrician. You can measure your child and weigh your child right at home. There's no reason you need a pediatrician, because all they are there for in the beginning is just to, I feel like, just to push the vaccines. I'm a nurse, and I feel even more like a failure now. I feel like I failed Sawyer as both a mom and a nurse, because I should have known. But in school, as a nurse, all they do is teach you the schedule of childhood vaccines. They don't tell you what's in them, what they can do, how they react to the body once inside. And we trusted them.
We did.
And I trusted what I learned in school. Some days I just, I started nursing as a career because I wanted to help people. And now I feel like we're helping people after the medical system has already ruined them.
Okay. I don't really know words. I don't know what we say to you, other than we're really sorry. We were lied to. You were lied to. In your profession and as a mother and a father. And we will put Sawyer's photo on the bus. We will write his name on the bus, and we will not forget him. I'm going to tell you that. I'm sorry, guys. People watching now just sending you so much love. You're not on your own, sadly. There's so many who see these babies. Thank you for speaking.
We just want to spread awareness to other parents and let them know that
No parent should have to go through this.
to make
Especially
sure
if it
you're
can be prevented. This can be prevented.
advocate really hard for your children. They're your children, not the doctors.